Hi there, my name's Liv and I make things. Today is a new day for Pokemon and I wanted to celebrate by making Arceus, or Arceus. I started off like I always do with some tinfoil and some wire. This design is pretty complex, so I used a sort of stencil in order to get the proportions right. Also, yeah, I don't have a printer, so I had to draw this myself. After filling out the body with some foil, I waged war with the wire. Once I had the skeleton, I filled it out with some movie magic. Really though, I used Super Sculpey here to get the rough shape of Arceus. These 4 pieces of wire hanging out are going to be used as anchors later on. Next I added on some blibs and blobs to the face to fill it out. This Pokemon has a sort of bird beak-like face, so I kept that in mind while sculpting. I watch quite a few sculpting artists on YouTube, and I know that some of them probably would carve this face out of the clay instead of adding it on, but I think it's just easier to add the clay on. I added on the, what I will call, helmet spikes to the head and shaped out the jaw. I'm so happy that Game Freak is finally switching up the Pokemon formula. Pokemon Diamond was the first game I ever played, and I always liked the idea of Pokemon, but the games weren't really for me. My thing is I always found them to be very repetitive after a while. Even though I really liked collecting all the Pokemon, I was a person who had to collect them all. The front of the face has a sort of beak indentation, so I just drew it on with my tool. Next, I added exhaust vents onto the face and the mane. I really don't know what the lines on this Pokemon are supposed to be. I'm just going to refer to them as exhaust vents. They look like the front of a car, and I think it's funny to call them that. I added the eyes and the ooh cheeks. Also, yes, there was a piece of orange glitter stuck to the side of this thing for like the first 3 hours. Eventually I took it off, I just didn't really care. The undercarriage also got these same exhaust vents. Here I added on the tie, or the hair. Again, I really don't know what this is. Pokemon are so weird with their designs because you don't really notice how weird they are until you have to stare at them for 5 hours. So yeah, if this is a tie or if this hair, it's a mystery to me. Next was to add the 2 spikes onto either side of the neck, with the top spike being slightly larger than the bottom. When adding large pieces of clay like this to sculptures, I find harder metal tools are better for attaching the clay to the body, and then I'll go over the lines with my silicone paintbrush to smooth everything out. I also added similar spikes to the shoulders. Arceus has these boot feet that I cheesed on by laying down a flat piece of clay and smoothed out the bottom. This creates the cup of the boot. I also added a bony knee to the leg. One boot down. I wonder what would happen if I... Oh, would you look at that? What about this one? Nice. With the head and torso complete, I have to add the same shoulder spikes onto the butt. I also added some clay to fill out the thighs a bit more. Next, I added the same exhaust vents to the tail. I just want to shout out Bulbapedia for having a million photos of the back of every single Pokemon ever. Figuring out how the tail connected with the stomach was like really difficult, so it was nice to have those references. And I also filled out the belly. The tiny spoon makes another appearance here, which is probably my favorite tool to use for sculpting. Since I'm going to be baking this in 2 parts, and Super Sculpey doesn't really stick well to smooth surfaces after they've been baked, I scratched up the body where the pool floaty would go. All of this texture here is going to help the new Sculpey stick to the hardened Sculpey after I've baked it. When I made the initial skeleton for this Pokemon, I left 4 pieces of wire exposed to act as sort of anchors for the pool floaty. I took a piece of wire, folded in half, twisted it around the anchor wires, and then twisted it some more until I had these 2 half circles. I added a long piece of clay to the base of the pool floaty and squished it down onto the body, which was very difficult. The only other time I've ever baked something and then added more clay on after the fact was whenever I made the boat from Wind Waker, and let's just say the head fell off a couple times. You can get this thing called Bacon Bond, but they didn't have it at my craft store. All of this wire needs to be covered in clay, with the anchor wires ending with these star-like points. Now for the other side. If only making dinner was this easy. Next step was to add on the gems. Whenever I covered the half moon wires in clay, I made sure that the outsides were kind of square-ish, so it's not really a circle, it's more of like a hexagon shape, but the inside part is still rounded. So I had to get a mix of angular and also circular. Time for one final bake, and then we can paint. After priming, I covered almost everything in titanium white. Painting white paint onto white primer is so boring. I painted the exhaust vents in a coat of gray. As you can probably see, I'm pretty messy whenever it comes to painting stuff like this. It doesn't really matter because I'll go over all of the edges again with white just to clean everything up. You can really see the messiness on this paint job around the face. I also think I had too much coffee this day because my hands were shaking a lot while I was painting. Later on, I went back in with some grays to add shadows to the boots, the creases around the legs, and the knees. I did the same in black with the exhaust vents. The best way to get accurate shadows for these types of figurines is just to look at the official artwork. For the pool floaty, I covered it in a layer of cadmium yellow. I also painted the nose and the feet the same color. Even though yellow is my favorite color, painting with yellow acrylic paint is always such a pain because for some reason it's not as opaque as other colors. So you only see me painting one layer here, but I painted like 5 layers of yellow to get it to this color. To this, I added some yellow ochre to darken the creases and the space between the floaty and the floating floaty. I also painted the angular sides of the outside of the floaty with ochre where they connect to the star points. This is again where I used the reference photo a lot to make sure the colors were accurate. I painted the 4 gems with a bright green. As well as the eyes and the ooh cheeks. I added some darker greens, like emerald and sap green, around the perimeter of the gems, as well as some light green to really make them pop. The center of the eyes are painted crimson red, which I outlined in black. It's been consistently -25 here in Canada, so I didn't spray Arceus with any sort of sealer. Whenever things warm up, I'll spray it with a matte spray, and then I'm gonna go over the gems and the eyes with a glossy varnish. Last thing to add is the pupil, and this Pokemon is ready for battle. If you haven't already, you should watch my last video. And maybe subscribe? Bye!